What's going on? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics. And now that we've gotten that list of books from CGC, I started going through them a little bit more, some of the ones that I wasn't aware of. And I think there's some interesting things, some questions that are worth asking. And there's one book that I found that maybe gives us a little bit of an idea how far back this swapping has been going on. Let's check these out. All right, so before we get started, please remember to hit that like button and hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. So I'm not going to rehash everything with this reholdering scam that was going on. Basically, the short of it is that there was this person out there that was taking books that were lower grade and putting them into cases that would imply they were higher grades, having them reholdered by CGC and then selling them off, making a profit on the difference in what they paid for the lower grade and what the higher grade sells for. That's the short of it. But CGC a couple days ago released that list of all the books that are at least being looked at from this person. Now, this doesn't mean that there aren't other books out there. I know that's a big thing people are talking about, like who else might have been doing this, all that. We hope that this investigation that CGC is doing will maybe turn up other people that have done this. I mean, you look for people that have maybe done a huge percentage of reholders. I've talked about that in other videos. That would be a sign, perhaps, that they're doing this, but not going to get into that too much. Here, what I wanted to talk about was that now that we've had a chance to look at these, I've gotten a few comments from people in the channel. There's a couple things I thought I would dive into a little bit more. One of them was, how far back has this person been doing this like reholder scam? So maybe one thing to just maybe give us a little bit of an idea there. Another one was, is this list actually complete? What were the metrics that were used by CGC to create this list? Because I think there's some pretty big questions there about that. Now, before I get into this, I just want to say, I feel like every video I put out here, there's at least a couple people that are like attacking because they think that like I'm taking content from someone else, that I'm like going on the forums and farming content from people, that kind of thing. That is not what I'm doing. All right. So let's just like put a stop to that right here. There are a couple guys that keep attacking me on the forums. I mean, I've seen the posts, and just for any of you out there, because the source of this seems to be that one of these guys commented on my first video with a finding for the Hulk that I talked about in the second video. So he thought that I took his comment, didn't give him credit, and talked about that Hulk in that second video. I never saw his comment. I went through the forums and I found out why. It's because when he commented on my video, he put a URL in the comment. If you aren't familiar with YouTube, what YouTube does is they will auto review comments. They will auto delete things. And if you have a link in your comment, it is a huge red flag. And most of the time, those are going to get auto deleted, which is why I didn't see it. So if you do want to share something with me, I have no problem giving anybody credit about anything. I've clearly shown that in other videos. Like anytime somebody has sent me something or talked to me about something, I mention them. I talk about their channels, whatever it might be. Send it to me in an email or message me on Instagram. YouTube is very tricky with comments. There are plenty of times where stuff gets auto-filtered and I never see them. And if you send me a link, almost guaranteed I'm not going to see it. So just want to put that out there just to try to calm down some of these this attack stuff that's out there. But I want to caveat that with, I don't know if anybody on the forum has talked about what I'm going to talk about here. So I didn't get this from the forum. Just something I found when I was going through this list from CGC that they recently put out. So with all of that, this is the list. I think I talked about this in that prior video that I did, but that was one where that was the first time I had like seen that list. I had just seen the top few results, and then I was like, okay, I need to film this thing. And so I decided to film it so that I could go through it at the same time with everybody else. You kind of could see my reaction at the same time. But now that I've had a chance to look through it a little bit more, there were a couple things I decided I wanted to look into. So the first thing that I decided to do with these was I really wanted to see if I could find that Amazing Fantasy 15. I have literally looked through like 700 or 800 images on Go Collect, and I cannot find one that looks like this one. So for all I know, that's a legitimate AF-15. I cannot, I mean, maybe there's an older image that I just decided to give up at. That book sells a lot. And so I went back a few years, like I said, like 700 or 800 images, and I couldn't find one that looked like this one that seemed like maybe it was swapped in. So the next thing that I decided I wanted to look at was what were some of the older cert numbers that were part of this list of books, because that might help us get an idea of some of the earlier scam books that might have been done here. So what I did was I took all the data that's here and I pasted it into Excel. That's what I think a lot of people have been doing lately, where they're presenting information on like the total number of books that are of each type, of each grade. Drew over at Como Comics did a great video on kind of breaking all of that down as well. And so what I did was I took all of that, same thing here, and I pasted it into Excel. You can see that here. And then I organized it by the cert number. So if you're not familiar, basically these cert numbers, for the most part, just count up. And so the smaller the number, the earlier the book was graded. And so you can see there's a few books here that have these, there's a 000 for the Iron Man 1. It's a real early book. Then we've got some 00s and everything here that are in, that start off the cert number. For comparison, the books that are more recently graded, let's go down to the bottom here, they start with a 4. So a lot of books have been graded since this these cert numbers started. But I started looking through a few of these, and one of the ones that I ended up finding some useful information on was this Hulk 181, this 9.4. And again, I don't know if anybody's talked about this on the forums, so please don't come after me, if somebody else has already, but I thought that this was pretty interesting. So with this Hulk 181, I did find 2 different sales for this book. And so if we go to GPA, this is one of those things, this is what we talked about at the beginning. This is how a lot of these original kind of like scam books were identified. And so this is the number, this 005-283-0003. That is the cert number for this book. And you can see that it sold in 2020. And that's why this isn't one that popped up on the list of books that were on his sold listings. Now, this likely, maybe somebody talked about this in the forums because people were looking back using Worth Point to find older listings and that kind of thing, older sales. But with this one, you see this 005-283-0003. Then if you go to 2019, and we search again, you'll find it again. It sold in February of 2019. Now, with this one, if we go here, this is the 2020 book, and this is the one. This is this sale here, $8,668. And this is something you'll find that like you get once you start looking at these books that this person was selling, they use the same background on a lot of them, and they all, at least in this time period, have this kind of like cloth background here. But here's the book that was sold by this person, since it's on that list from CGC, I'm assuming sold by that person. And, looks like a decent enough book. Looks like it could be a 9.4. For all I know, it's a green label, something like that, but looks like a decent enough 9.4. Then if you go to the 2019 sale, this is the book. Now with these 2 books, the actual white line on the left-hand side is pretty close. You can see there's a little bit more of one here. It's like maybe he pressed it or something. So you could make the argument that it's maybe the same book. But then when you look at the back cover, you can see it's got this overspray here. And I know there are cleaning methods now, I believe, that can get rid of the overspray, but still, it's got this overspray here. And if we go to this book that sold later, and we go to the back cover, it does not have that overspray. Now, the other thing, though, is that if you go down to the bottom corner here, and it's a little tough probably to see it. I'll try to zoom in here. This is where you can really use the cut of the book to show if it's a different book or not. When people try to make an argument at these high grades that it could be the same, you've got this little spot down here. And then if we go look at this copy, we go down to the bottom, you can see that spot is almost off the page and you don't have any of the black here. Whereas this one, you've got these 3 little black spots here and the spot is higher up. So we know it's a different book. Like that's how you can clearly tell it's a different book. Now, this is one where, yeah, for whoever has this book, hopefully you send it in, because you definitely have something that's not the correct book in here, whether it is a lower grade or if it's missing the Marvel value stamp or a page or something. At least for someone out there, this is one of those books that is definitely a fraudulent book. But the thing that I really wanted to point out with this is that this was 2020. This was March of 2020, almost 4 years ago. And so I know from what people have talked about with like Worth Point on the forums that this person has sold going back to like 2010 or maybe even a little earlier than that. It's like 15 years, but we don't know when it actually started that the sales were fraudulent. I mean, this could have been a person that started off as a legitimate dealer, and then at some point they decided to go down this path, and start doing this, but we don't know when that was. And so, I mean, this is 4 years back. So this has definitely, or almost 4 years back now. This has definitely been going on for quite a few years. Now, maybe if somebody goes and checks more and more of these books, maybe they'll find something that goes back further than this. 4 years back means that this isn't something that just started happening. This isn't something where this person in the last 6 months or the last year was swapping these books. We know it goes at least this far back. So just something that I thought I'd point out with this one. The next thing I wanted to talk about was, it seems like this list isn't as complete as I was expecting it to be. And that's, somebody had pointed this out in a comment in one of my videos, I think in this last video, where they commented that there was like a Amazing Spider-Man 194 that person had sold in like October, that was on their eBay page, that was not part of this list, because we don't have any clarity on how this list was created. I was originally thinking that this would be any book this person had ever submitted to CGC would be put into question, that would be on this list. That doesn't seem like that's the case. I don't know if it's just books that they got reholdered. I don't know if that's what's being used as the determining factor for this, but it definitely is not every book that this person has submitted. And the reason that we know that is, we go back to this table here, where I pulled in all this information, I organized them by cert number. This is one of the reasons I originally did this, was I wanted to take a look at some of these submissions that this person had sent in. And like I've talked about in some of these other videos, you can see their submission pretty easily, where you look at this number over here, and if they submitted, the first book in the submission is going to be 001, the second book is going to be 002, so on, like that. And we can see, like, there's books like this where it's like 412-1886001, then 2, doesn't have 3, and then it has 4. And so if we take a look at this book right here, so we'll plug that cert number in. So here's the 001, Amazing Spider-Man 194 and a 9.8. Then if we go to number 2, and it's Amazing Spider-Man 194 and a 9.8. And then we go to number 4, and it's Amazing Spider-Man 300 and a 9.8. What about that number 3? So the number 3 was an Amazing Spider-Man 300 and a 9.6. Why isn't that book on this list? I don't understand why some of these are here and other ones aren't. And you can go through it. If you pull this up and you do them in order, you can see that. Like, for example, here's a 130849002. There's no 1. So if we went and looked at that one, and we look for the 001, for whatever reason, this Amazing Spider-Man 194 and a 9.6 is not in question. And I don't understand why, because there are other 9.6s that are on this list. Like, maybe it's that this one was never reholdered. Maybe that's the reason why, but it would be nice to have a little more clarity about why some of these books that this person clearly submitted aren't in question and other ones are. Because, I mean, to me, everything that this person has submitted is should be questioned. Here's just a few examples. Here's another one where there's no number 1 there. And if we go over and look up the number 1, this is Amazing Spider-Man 300 and a 9.6. So just another example of one where it's not all of them that are on this list. And it would just be nice to have some type of clarity on how this list was defined, because like I said, I was thinking that this would have been a complete list of everything this person had submitted. Like, why not be safe on that? Why not just include everything, have everything reevaluated? Because clearly this person was doing some shady stuff for a long time. And I don't know why you would want anything out there that has one of these serial numbers tied to it. So that's my take on this. Now, one other thing I just thought I would mention, just because one of the watchers of the channel, he messaged me on Instagram. He had taken the list and he had basically applied the cover price values to all of them, just to kind of get a rough idea of what the value is of all the books on this list. Now, that didn't include differences based on prices for newsstand or Mark Jewelers, like that type of breakdown, but it did at least give you a what should be like the baseline value for this. And that was $1.34 million. And so the person that sent me that was Boomstick357 over on Instagram. So if you want to go over to Instagram, give him a sub. He was looking into these too, and he had done that. And so I thought that was just something that's interesting to talk about, because like when I had looked at this list initially, just like my rough guess was about 2 million. I was thinking it was probably around 2 million. And so if the base value is 1.34 million, maybe we don't get up to 2, but I think probably 1.5 to 1.7, once you start accounting for the added value for newsstands, the added value for the Mark Jewelers. I mean, this is not a small sum of money. I mean, we're talking easily over $1 million. Like, there's no question about that. But it sounds like probably 1.5 to 1.7 million, in that range, wouldn't be an unheard of value based on that analysis. So yeah, I just wanted to give him a quick shout out for sending me that, and just something to give you an idea, like what is the value that's going on with these. Now, just for the nerds in the audience that are watching, I thought I would just show one more thing in case you had wanted to go and look at these yourself to get an idea how to do this, just how you can do this if you have Excel. And this is based on something Drew over at Como Comics, like this is what he did to get his data. But it's basically, you take all the data here, you can copy it all. Oh my God, there's so much. It's just crazy scrolling down through this full list. You copy it all, and then we can put that into this Excel spreadsheet. Then we can just then we can expand all these rows, just make it a little bit easier to read. And then all we have to do is, if we select all of these, we go down to the bottom here, select everything. And this is just for people, if you aren't familiar with how to do this kind of stuff, it's just something that can be helpful. And you go to insert and go to recommended pivot tables. I feel like this is something probably a lot of people aren't really familiar with, unless you do a lot of like data analysis, that kind of stuff. You go recommended pivot tables, and they'll give you different recommendations. And I just picked this one because I figured it'd be easier. This is the one that's going to give me the sum of, or no, this one here, the sum of all the different counts for each grade. And the only reason I did that is because that's the structure I wanted in. So now we've got what's called a pivot table here. And it's these really useful things that do all kinds of, like, they add things up for you. So that's how you can get like how many ASM 194s there were real quickly, that kind of thing. But what I can do is I just change it to the title instead of the grade. So over on the right-hand side here, I select this title issue variant instead of grade. And now you have this really great list that gives you how many, Amazing Spider-Man 300s there were. You can see Amazing Spider-Man 300, 104. Amazing Spider-Man 252, 12. Incredible Hulk 340 was 11. Hulk 181 was 19. Like, that's where, all these numbers that people have been talking about. This is a quick, easy way to get that. So if you wanted to go into this and look at this yourself, this is one of those ways you could do it. Like the ASM 194, 58. Now, the other interesting thing that you can do with this is if you add the grade back in, now you can see the count of the grade of each one. And this is where, like, this is one of the things that I think Dave with Comic Book Investments was talking about some, where you've got ASM 194, like this one person, sent in 58 books, 56 of them were 9/8. Like that is insane. That's insanity. That 56 were 9/8. Like Dave mentioned this in his video, and I will reiterate it here. There should have been red flags for that. Like that is so uncommon for 9/8 of these types of books to have one person responsible for that percentage. Like I think that ends up being like 12% or 11% or so of all 9/8 on census for Amazing Spider-Man 194. I mean, how does that not like pull in a red flag? Like there must not be anything that's actively checking what people are submitting versus like the census or versus their history or whatever, because this is the type of thing that hopefully this like team of researchers or whatever that they brought in or that are looking into this, this is what they should be doing with every single person that submits to CGC. Because if you have somebody, that under like one or multiple accounts, you can pull in all the books that they've submitted and you just do this. I mean, you saw how quick that was. It's not like you have to go through and count each of them. Like you create a table like this and you saw that in a matter of seconds. I have all the counts for these. And I mean, then you go to the Amazing Spider-Man 300, 86 9/8. That was less than I had estimated. I mean, I think I had roughed out 50. And so out of the 1,500 9/8, I thought it was like roughly 3%, but it's actually 86. I mean, that means it's over 5%. It's like 5 to 6% of the 300s are from this, are likely fraudulent. And Dave talked about this in his video as well. What this person was likely doing is they had, like one or two or whatever really strong 9/8s, and they would just send those in, get them back, open it, put in the lower grade book, send it in again, get it back, open it, put in the lower grade book. And so they just had some probably really solid 9/8s that they would do that with. If it came back a 9/6, they'd either crack it out and resubmit, or they would just sell it at that point. Who knows? But yeah, this is just something I thought I would show, that if anybody else out there, likes looking at data, likes looking at this kind of stuff, because that's why I think that this whole thing has been so interesting to people. I mean, yeah, it sucks that this has happened, but it's kind of like solving a mystery, right? Like that's why it's like you're seeing all these, like all this data and all this information that's out there, and you're trying to figure out what exactly is going on, and this is just, it's hard to say it's fun, but it is kind of fun to go through it, even though it's, I mean, it sucks. Like I get it. It sucks, but it's still kind of fun going through this stuff. But yeah, I just thought I would throw this out there. Like if anybody else, likes to do this kind of thing and they weren't familiar with pivot tables, this is one way you can do this and get these numbers real quickly. But also CGC, do this. like CGC 100% should be doing this for every single person that submits books. Whether they tell us about it or not, use it to crack down on people. I mean, of course, I think they should tell us, like, because then we should be able to try to resolve anything else that's been going on out there. But this is one of the ways that, at least when you're looking at individuals, you can quickly see like huge red flags. 56, 56 9/8 for Amazing Spider-Man 194. Just ridiculous. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. Saw some interesting things. Maybe you learned how to use pivot tables in Excel, extra nerdy video at the end here. But if you did, hit that like button, subscribe button, notification bell, all that kind of stuff. Got more videos over here. If you'd like to watch some of my other videos, subscription button right here. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, I'd really appreciate it. And I will see you in the next video.